All usage of any kind of media, whether that be images and/or audio, are reserved for their respective copyright holders, and I, by using them, make no claim of ownership, and am simply using them to give this video a visual flair for the audience. Hello, my name is SpexTube. Now, it's no secret that Season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS was a bit of a mess. Given VRAINS was reaching the end of its run much sooner than anticipated, its last season was very rushed with a lot of rush build-up, the immediate killing off of several named characters within a few opening episodes, with the second half made up of only 3 duels lasting a total of 9 episodes. There was quite a lot of potential left with VRAINS' final season, and I'm here to put my own twist onto it. A lot of ideas that I'm going to bring up will create some retcons based on characters I want to include, so their initial fates will be altered to fit this rewrite. The main basis of the season will remain like the original, but more heavily expanded with the number of factions and motives. Also, the actual plot is my last focus, as one of my main disappointments with Season 3 was the lack of possible interactions and dynamics, which is what will be my focus here. So what better way to start than introducing every faction involved and their members, so we have a clear picture of who we are dealing with, why they are here, and get a sense of their role in the story. The first faction to be introduced is Team Soltech. Now, given the many changes in writing and direction during VRAINS' run, the leadership at Soltech changed quite erratically, from the Knight, Rook and Bishop in Season 1, changing to the Soul Queen in Season 2, and then the introduction to the Kings in Season 3, there was little if not no consistency with the way Soltech was managed. For this rewrite, the concept of the chess pieces will remain the same, with all pieces being used at a single time in the structure of a pyramid. At the top, there will be the King and Queen. Queen will remain the same, with King her co-monarch of Soltech, both holding the key cards that I stole in the original Season 3. Both King and Queen will have a Bishop, Knight and Rook each to serve as their managers, and at the bottom of this management, before the regular employees, are a total of 8 pawns, 4 pawns for either monarch. For clarification, the terms monarch, manager and pawn are used to group those particular people together. Given all his work over his career, Akira has been promoted from pawn to manager, most likely one of Queen's, with Hayami gladly taking a role as one of Queen's pawns. The other title holders aren't necessary to name, given Soltech will mostly be written the same way as they were. The next faction is Team Hanoi. Team Hanoi is still living in Revolver Speedboat, stopping every so often at the docks for supplies. Byra, Gnome, Faust and Spectre remain as loyal as ever, but Pandor will not be included in this rewrite, given the lack of anything she really did, but also I never really cared for her as a character. With that exception, there are no changes to this faction. The next faction is essentially made from people who aren't necessarily on the same team all the time, but do share a common goal during this rewrite. This is Team VRAINS, made of Ghost Girl, Blood Shepherd, Blue Angel and Go. Although we don't see this until the closing shots of episode 120, Ghost Girl and Blood Shepherd have teamed back up again as bounty hunting hackers, travelling through Link VRAINS. Also, Aoi and Go would be back on the Charisma Duelist circuit for their fans. Now these 4 don't have a specific faction that they would work in, therefore I grouped them together. Occasionally, Aoi and Go would be invited by Emma to join them on missions, with Aoi using her Blue Maiden avatar and Go using his Season 2 Soltech uniform. Before moving on to Team Ignis, we have Team Lost Incident. This faction is intended to be made up of all 6 Lost Incident victims: Yusaku, Takeru, Miyu, Jin, Spectre, and Wendy's partner, who didn't have a name, so I'm going to call him Wenwu. Given one of the antagonist factions will be the Ignis, I thought it made sense for the Lost Incident victims to team up as a singular faction. Before getting into the details of this, Kusanagi will be working with all of our protagonist factions like normal. Now for this to work, some big changes are needed for some of these characters to be applied. As I'm sure most people know, Wendy killed Wenwu prior to Season 2. For the sake of this rewrite, I'm going to alter his fate. Instead of being killed off, Wendy intercepted him while he was dueling in Link VRAINS and transported the 2 of them to a pocket space like Earth did in episode 66. As we know, Wenwu seemed to build his life back up like Miyu, and wasn't as haunted by the Lost Incident as some of the other victims. It's safe to assume he didn't go out of his way to find the truth like Yusaku. Wendy would explain everything to him, to which Wenwu would be understanding but be confused as to why Wendy is not only introducing himself, but also telling him the truth. Wendy explains there's going to be a dramatic change in the upcoming conflict between humans and AI. Therefore, like Earth, he wants to see what humans are really like. Despite saying this, we know Wendy intends to duel and defeat Wenwu because he despises humans but is keeping a facade to prevent Wenwu of learning of this. Regardless, Wendy will defeat Wenwu, and as he's in defeat, Wendy infects Wenwu with a similar virus to one Lightning used on Miyu to put him into a coma. Much like Miyu, Wenwu does wake up after the end of the Mirror Lake VRAINS arc, but his perception is changed. He's still the seemingly chill guy he was before, but he has a growing hatred for AI after the way Wendy tricked him. Another character to address is Jin. Now, as per the ending of the Mirror Link VRAINS arc, it is learned that Jin has had his memories of the Lost Incident removed because of Lightning managing to hold on to some of his consciousness during his duel with Revolver in episode 98. I'm going to tweak this slightly by making it so that Jin didn't lose all his memories of the lost incident, but rather he lost most of them. As we learned from Lightning during the incident, he purposely made the incident more traumatic for Jin compared to the other victims, but now that's gone. The reason for this is the purpose of this faction. All 6 victims receive anonymous, untraceable messages to meet up in the Den City courtyard, where they all meet and sit at Kusanagi's truck. With all 6 confirming their invitations, they become acquainted and learn of each other's lost incident trauma. Of course, we all already know how Yusaku, Takeru, and Spectre dealt with it, but this meeting gives us more insight to Miyu and Wenwu, who managed to completely move on from the lost incident. This faction becomes more invested in each other's experiences and become closer friends. Spectre, while he does enjoy the company, keeps his allegiance with Revolver, but does agree that it's nice to share his unique perspective on the incident with the other victims. Yusaku and Takeru do share their linked VRAINS identities with Wenwu and Miyu, who do agree to secrecy on the matter, and this faction minus Spectre have cemented themselves more as a team. Team I is the final faction, which begins with I back in the destroyed Cyberse world, along with Robopi in their humanoid forms. Using some of the energy from the other Ignis that he received during episode 102, I manages to resurrect their consciousness in their own unique humanoid forms like his own. First he resurrects both Flame and Aqua, easily the closest Ignis to him. Unfortunately, due to the limited energy I received, any of the Ignis he manages to resurrect are on a time limit till they permanently die off. At first, Flame and Aqua are frustrated that I would put himself through this, but eventually understand the guilt he felt when he failed to save them. This is when I poses a solution. Despite the lack of data material in the barren Cyberse world, Soltech assimilated enough data when they dissected Earth, that they created a much smaller source of data material which is just about sustaining linked brains. Soltech refer to this source as the core, which they use for their Soltis androids, which is what the humanoid Ignis base their appearances off. I, Flame and Aqua agreed to take over Soltech to not only retrieve the core, but use it to restore the Cyberse world back to its former glory. They are about to leave until Robopi pipes up about Earth, Windy and Lightning. As expected, I, Flame and Aqua have their doubts about whether they can trust the other 3 Ignis, given the tension between them all during the Mirror Link Brains arc. Aqua vouches for Earth, who is next to be resurrected, and agrees with the plan. Flame, having learned of Lightning shenanigans in relation to Windy, chooses to vouch for him, and to everyone's surprise, the resurrected Windy is much more amicable and agrees, which leaves only Lightning. Despite everyone's reluctance, since their plan for restoring their lives and their world does include only taking down the humans that wronged them, Lightning is revived but is immediately imprisoned in the same cave he originally imprisoned Aqua. The others want to include him but are distrustful as to whether he'll go rogue. Lightning decides to challenge I for leadership of the plan, to which I accepts. Before moving on, I'm going to clarify the decks the Ignis will be using. Earth, Windy and Lightning will be using the same decks from before, G-Golem, Storm Rider and Armatus Legio. Aqua will be using Marincess, and in doing so, Aoi will return back to her Trickstars, despite having used Marincess in Season 3. I feel it'll be more interesting than both duelists using the same archetype. Now this is a bit more of a struggle for Flame, whose original deck was Salamangreat that Soulburner uses. I think Flame should still play Salamangreat, but have a few cards that Soulburner hadn't used yet, or Flame didn't give him, which could give him an advantage if they duelled. Getting back to I versus Lightning, I would win that duel with his added Nisters. Having lost, Lightning agrees for I to lead their plan, which goes as follows. The 7 of them will hack the Soltis and use them as an army against Soltech to allow easy access to the core, absorb all the core's data, and take that data and recreate the core inside the Cyberse world, replenishing it. Everyone including Lightning agrees and they set off. Team Ignis set off slowly, hacking their way through the Soltis, gathering them in an abandoned warehouse ready for the takeover. Eventually the Soltis head to Soltech and head on their rampage. The Ignis and Robopi disguise themselves within and sneak off, while the regular Soltis deal with the security and regular employees. All the Ignis reach the core and together using an Ignis algorithm, all absorb a 1/6 of the core's data into themselves. Before leaving, they are caught by King and Queen but quickly disappear and return to the Cyberse world. Unfortunately, their quick disappearance left a trail for Soltech to follow, so after a quick planned procedure, the King and Queen organize a group of Soltech crew, including Akira and Hayami, to use the trail to head to the Cyberse world and retrieve the core data. Before leaving, Akira messages Emma about the current situation, and the details are quickly spread between Team VRAINS, Team Lost and the Hanoi. Revolver, being the genius he is, chooses for the Hanoi to not get involved yet. As much as he is angry that the Ignis have been momentarily revived, he does keep his cool. Much like the Mirror Link VRAINS arc, he decides that it's best to observe the situation before jumping straight in. With Team VRAINS and Team Lost, all members are in shock of the news and feel conflicted on what to do. Much like the Hanoi, Team VRAINS and Team Lost choose to observe the situation, but more closely. From Team VRAINS, only Yusaku and Takeru go to the Cyberse world, since Miyu, Wenwu, and Jin are more thrown off and aren't fully accustomed to Link VRAINS yet, while both Aoi and Dojin volunteer to join them, leaving Emma and Go to keep a watch on Link VRAINS in case of any shenanigans. In the Cyberse world, the Ignis begin their plan and infuse the original center pillar with the data they recovered from the core. With that, they begin in sequence, infusing their unique Ignis algorithms into their own pillars, which represent each of their attributes, and the restoration process of the Cyberse world begins. Flame, Aqua, Earth, and Windy smile in joy, seeing the warmth and colour return to their home. Eye and Lightning take a higher view, with Lightning noticing a crack in Eye's facade. Surprisingly, Lightning questions Eye's change in emotion. Eye responds that he never could believe it was this simple all along, that to make sure he could live somewhat safely with the Ignis, he'd have to turn his back on his human comrades. Seeing this, Lightning commends Eye, assuring him he did the right thing, and that if even he, Lightning, wasn't here, this is exactly what he would have wanted. After the main center of the Cyberse world is finalized, the Ignis agree to expand their world and recreate their specific zones in which they would remain. However, during this, the barrier protecting starts to crack and Team I regroup near the center to check. A cracked hole appears and data flows through, and when it reaches the ground it manifests as the Soltech team, including Akira. Unnoticed by either team, Yusaku, Takeru, Aoi and Dojin manage to enter but hide discreetly. Rather quickly, Team I dispatch of the entire Soltech team, including Hayami but excluding Akira. The rest are deleted ruthlessly, with Ai holding Akira as his messenger boy. Aoi attempts to call out to him, but Dojin holds her back. Ai tells Akira to inform his bosses that the Cyberse world is off limits. Akira attempts to tell Ai that he should know that Akira doesn't want to do this. Ai yells that if Akira doesn't want to do something, he just shouldn't, with Akira pointing out that if he steps out of line, he'll get fired. This really sets Ai off, yelling that Akira is just weak, and then throws him to the side. The rest of Team I, excluding Lightning, all share a concerned look. Defeated, Akira retreats to Soltech, but before Team Ignis can continue, our heroes jump down to confront them. Of course, Yusaku, Takeru and Aoi are ecstatic to see their Ignis companions again, but feel concerned and disappointed with the direction they seem to have gone. Taking the leads, Playmaker and I step forward to converse with Ai, explaining that he and his team just wanted to take back what belongs to them and live in peace. Yusaku can't agree since they just deleted several people. Ai attempts to justify himself as Soltech were the invaders in this case, and that the Ignis were just defending themselves. Back in the real world, Akira is confronted by both King and Queen, and after explaining the recent events, King and Queen organize the rest of the managers and pawns to head to the Cyberse world. Just like in Season 2, Akira tries to dissuade Queen's ideas, given what just occurred, and despite Queen attempting to rationalize her plan, Akira puts his foot down and quickly locks the Soltech team from entering the network. Queen demands Akira unlock their access, but he refuses, re-attempting to dissuade Queen from her current plan. Realizing she won't back down, and with her threatening both his position and even Aoi, Akira challenges Queen to a duel. If he wins, Soltech will stand down, but if Queen wins, Akira is fired and Soltech can continue. The Soltech management team head into a private area of the network like I vs Queen in episode 104 to witness the duel. As expected, Akira struggles during the duel and manages to land a few hits, but unfortunately it's not enough and he loses. Honouring the agreement he made, Akira logs out, unlocks Soltech's network access, packs his belongings and leaves for home. Our heroes leave the Cyberse world and return to the real world, where Team Lost decide to plan their next move, while Team VRAINS heads to Akira to check on him. Aoi is sad about Akira's position, but being honest, Akira claims to feel relieved for having the Soltech burden removed. He always felt pushed around, and while his and Aoi's home life could change drastically, he knows he'll be okay, and having witnessed Aoi's growth, he knows she'll be okay as well. Emma brings the conversation back to the current crisis. She is concerned about what the Ignis' next plan will be, given that endgame can't just be the restoration of the Cyberse world if they're willing to delete people. Dojin suspects they may actively attack humans after the Cyberse world is fully restored, and Go is in agreement. Aoi feels similar but can't bring herself to the idea that Aqua could have gone rogue like that. Meanwhile, back at Kusanagi's truck, Team Lost are at a loss for words. Everyone but Wenwu and Jin feel considerably betrayed, given they never would have considered their Ignis counterparts were capable of what they just did. Unfortunately, the current conflict cements how Wenwu and Jin have started to feel. Soon later, Kusanagi receives an invitation from Team VRAINS to meet in an isolated area of VRAINS and strategize about what to do about the Ignis. Everyone from either team agrees, and Yusaku forwards the invitation to the Hanoi, who also come. Everyone meets up with Akira leading the meeting. Akira brings everyone up to speed on the current crisis, and that he wants to organize a counterattack against both Soltech and the Ignis. After a somewhat heated discussion, it is agreed that only 5 out of everyone available will head to the Cyberse world, and the remainders will only step in if things go awry. Jin and Wenwu immediately volunteer themselves, given they have their grievances with their respective Ignis. Revolver volunteers Spectre, who obliges as he doesn't feel it is necessary for him to get involved yet, and Emma and Dojin volunteer as Dojin still feels resentment to all AI, and Emma doesn't want to leave his side. The agreement is made with the 5 volunteers heading on the same path as Soltech, but away behind them. On the other hand, everyone else logs out and returns to their home bases to spectate. Back in the Cybers world, all the Ignis are steadily rebuilding their specific areas of their home, respective to their attribute. However, a bolt of lightning pierces the sky, and a new hole appears in the sky from which the Soltech team drops in. King and Queen remain at the front with the rest of the management kneeling behind them. Queen makes her statement that she doesn't want to fight and will gladly leave if the Ignis return the call to them. As expected, I refuses, and before Queen can make a physical move, the 6 Ignis raise their arms, revealing a blinding light, teleporting all the Soltech team to different areas of the Cyberse world. From this point till a bit later, this rite is going to function like the Mirror Link VRAINS arc, with the cast split and having to fight their own unique duels. A pair of Soltech members find themselves in areas respective to the Ignis who created it. Before they can try to flee, a barrier is put in place to prevent them from doing so. After that, each Ignis goes to their respective field to deal with their opponents. To start with, 2 members of the Soltech team are met with the Ignis respective of the field they find themselves. For Flame, Aqua, Earth, Windy and even Robopi, it doesn't matter who they come across, as their opponents get defeated quite easily and are deleted. On the other hand, it does matter for Eye and Lightning. Eye faces a bishop with Queen spectating, while Lightning faces a knight, the other knight formerly being Kira, with King spectating. This is done as it stalls for our 5 volunteers to reach the Cyberse world. Unfortunately, a trap was set in place in the hole that the Soltech team entered through, which immediately sends our team to randomized sections for their upcoming duels. Now with only I, Queen, and our Kroon who just entered, we can now move on to more focused duels. From our current cast, we still get I versus Queen. As much as I would have given the duel to Earth for him to get revenge for being deleted, I still enjoyed the I vs Queen duel from episode 104, and it parallels nicely with Lightning vs King. Having I and Lightning defeat the top of the Soltech team, not only does it enforce their strength, but means they retrieve the Soltech keycards, to not only fully take control of Soltech, but advance their plot while the other duels occur, which will be explained later. Speaking of Earth, he would duel Spectre. This works because not only was Spectre Earth's original human partner, but after Earth's death in episode 75, Spectre has started growing fonder of Earth, having watched back his duel with Go. Since having spent more time with Team Lost and learning of Earth's resurrection, Spectre has grown more emotionally than he ever had done since the Lost incident. This isn't to say that Spectre wouldn't lost his more manic side that we witnessed during his duels with Aoi and Lightning, but he would appear more reserved and humbler when dueling, especially in this duel. In the end, I would have Spectre lose this duel. Despite Spectre's poor treatment in Season 3, I still gave him the previous development, so at least he got something, because in truth, I was always going to have him lose this duel. To make all the Ignis somewhat threatening, they all need one big win to propel themselves forward, and I think it would make sense that given his new emotional development, Spectre would indirectly hold back, which Earth could then take advantage of. This would parallel how Revolver held back First Lightning in their duel, and it would also enrage Revolver for when he comes. For the next duel, it would be Dojin vs Robopi. Now technically this duel still did occur, although it was a 2v1 including Emma, but Emma won't be involved with this duel at all. It makes sense for the one human who hates AI more than anyone on his side to still duel easily the most innocent AI in Robopi. Based on the original duel, it's more than likely Robopi would still defeat Dojin, which would affect Emma heavily given how close she and her brother have become more recently. Speaking of Emma, she would duel Aqua. Now this duel would also hold some weight, as Emma did get some time to bond with Aqua after she and Aoi rescued her from Dojin in episodes 76 and 77 until our team headed to Mirror Link VRAINS. Given this and Aqua's personality, she would be hesitant to duel as hard, giving Emma a slight advantage. Despite this, Aqua would overcome this and defeat Emma, but only half-heartedly. Witnessing this, both Aoi and Miyu are in complete disbelief, and only after Emma is deleted does Aqua fall into the ground in shame. For our team, that leaves only Wenwu and Jin. In all honesty, between Flame and Windy, the matches could have been easily switched. However, given what the intended plot progression is, Wenwu and Jin would have to lose, and instead of Wenwu losing to Windy again, I'd have Flame defeat Wenwu and Windy defeat Jin. These matchups do have a few implications going forward though. With Windy defeating Jin, not only does he appear more threatening, but it puts him more on par with Lightning's skill, as Jin was Lightning's human, who is a more competent duelist than he would seem. With Wenwu vs Flame, Wenwu would have a boiling rage for Windy, which would lead Flame to come into his defense, which mirrors how Flame still tried to treat Windy as a friend, even after his defeat by holding onto his data in episode 89. With our first wave defeated, our next wave prepares to enter, but some non-dueling aspects would occur before then. With Eye and Lightning having recovered the Soltech keycards, They use them to gain full access to Soltech's digital network. With the rest of the Ignis and Robopi, they all create an Ignis algorithm to assign a Soltech device to every human in Den City. With this activation, a link is sent to Akira, who receives a pre-recorded message from Queen detailing what Akira's next step should be now. Getting into contact with the rest of the crew, Akira teams up with Faust, Gnome, and Byra to attempt to stop the Ignis' plan. This plan being to forcibly digitize every human in the city, and eventually the planet within late VRAINS, with the Ignis eventually becoming the superior species ruling over humanity. With this and Soltech, all the Ignis but I now wouldn't die from their temporary resurrection, as they can integrate themselves permanently in a digital space, this time truly making them immortal. With I and Lightning continuing with the algorithm and plan, which has been slowed by Akira and the Hanoi, our next duelists appear to duel will be Takeru, Go, Revolver, Miyu, and Kusanagi. Despite 5 new characters jumping in, we're only going to have 4 duels. The reason for this is because Miyu and Aqua won't duel but just talk. After having to defeat Emma, Aqua is having a mental struggle on if subduing humanity is worth even just her own immortality. Given this, Miyu can actually have a conversation with her and for now understand her. This would further prove where Aqua got her personality from, as they both complement each other almost perfectly. On the other hand, our next 4 duelists would not be coming to talk, of course. First off will be Kusanagi vs Windy, with Windy being the obvious victor. It would make sense for Kusanagi to target Windy for defeating Jin, and having practiced with Ignis algorithms in Season 2, could have created a program to guarantee he'd duel Windy despite the randomization barrier. This would also make Windy appear more threatening, as although Jin hasn't really been built up as a good duelist, nor was he meant to, defeating Kusanagi almost does, given the fight he was able to put against Yusaku in episodes 92 and 93, even if Yusaku was holding back. The next duel would be a surprise rematch with Go vs Earth. Now despite not being able to duel Queen, Earth can take his true revenge against Go, as he was the one to defeat him. Now one reason this will be possible is because this will be a master duel, not a speed duel, meaning Go wouldn't have access to his anti-skill, not that he uses it anymore with his Goki deck, although it was a factor that played in Earth's defeat. Another reason is also because much like Spectre, Go would indirectly hold back. After losing to Yusaku in episode 82, Go has felt guilty for his actions during his time as a bounty hunter, and meeting Earth again would cause his guilt to mess with his focus. More importantly, it's plausible his Goki deck isn't as strong as his Dino Wrestler deck when facing Earth's G Golem deck, which would result in Go's defeat, but would feel joy in having gotten over his guilt in this duel. From here we move on to a duel that we still got in Season 3, which is Soulburner vs Robopi. This duel is of course occurring during different circumstances, but with similar themes. Originally, Robopi died as the intelligence I gave him was too much for his generic household hardware to handle, which caused him to malfunction. This aspect is still present, but expressed a bit differently. Instead, Robopi has become very obsessive when it comes to protecting I and the rest of the Ignis, and his obsession has only grown more with every victory he's had so far. However good his deck is or was, I feel this version of Robopi is more believable to put up a decent fight against Soulburner after several wins. In this duel, Soulburner would attempt to take advantage of Robopi's former loyalty to Yusaku and even himself and Kusanagi. This would slowly cause the eventual malfunction in Robopi, but instead of it occurring before he could win the duel, it would occur during Soulburner's final turn, which causes himself to waver because Robopi has now returned to normal. Yusaku overcomes would still ask Takeru to finish the duel as he can't bear to watch Robopi like this. Takeru would connect and win the duel, deleting Robopi. This would be a big hit to I given the bond he and Robopi have had so far, but unfortunately, Lightning will take advantage of this and feed into I's anger and frustration to momentarily take control of their program for a surprise that will be realized later. In the real world, Yusaku, Akira, and the rest of the Hanoi are hard at work with the counter program. A problem they find is they can only attack the program by directly interfering with the code by using their comrades as links into the Cyberse world. What this means is that they need their comrades to continue entering the Cyberse world, whether they win or lose, to keep their connection open. Of course, the Ignis, if they wish to accomplish their goal, need to defeat our crew to disrupt that connection as much as possible. The last duel for this wave is Revolver vs Flame. I decided on this matchup given the famous Soulburner vs Revolver duel that takes place in episodes 115 and 116. Although Soulburner won that duel, I would argue both duelists are still as strong as each other, despite the momentary pep talk towards the end. So now the question would be, could Flame defeat Revolver solo? I think Flame could, but given how similar Flame and Aqua are, in terms of wanting to align themselves with humanity during Season 2, I think Revolver would take a play from Spectre's book and play some mind games to cause Flame to doubt himself, and while Flame would normally calm down Soulburner in these circumstances, Flame by himself finds it much harder to do so. I'd argue both duelists are still quite equal, but this would be the factor that leads to Revolver's win and Flame's deletion. With both Robopi and Flame's deletions, I is starting to spiral even more. Though he knew his fellow Ignis' current lifespans were limited, it didn't make losing them again right in front of him any less sad. I would not be the only one, as Takeru was hoping to meet up with Flame to try to get through to him like with Miyu and Aqua. This would enrage Takeru against Revolver even more, but their dispute would have to wait. Given they were the only duelists from our side to survive their duels, the randomization barrier activates, sending them to new sections of the Cyberse world. Before that comes to pass, more progress is made with our crew's counter program, despite a slight gap with the randomization barrier. During this time, Aoi meets with Yusaku at Kusanagi's hot dog truck and invites her inside. Now, although not specified, during the time in which Akira was fired, Aoi attempted to cheer him up the same way. This would lead to either a same or similar scenario for both Aoi and Akira to learn Yusaku's identity. Yusaku and Aoi would still have their initial bench conversation about facing Ai, and this new conversation would be a slight continuation of that one. Aoi made a point in the original conversation how she is unsure if she'd be able to face Aqua if she'd gone rogue as well. Given the current plot, this would be altered to whether she can, given all the Ignis have gone rogue. This conversation would entail how Aoi is feeling now, having witnessed Aqua actually delete someone, and not just anyone but Emma, Aoi's pseudo-mentor. With this conversation, Yusaku and Aoi would better relate, given how they both decided to initially stand down, not being comfortable with facing their former partners. Unfortunately, a new development has occurred that changes everything. Revolver and Soulburner have landed in new sections and are greeted with new opponents, Earth and Lightning respectively. It's here where Lightning reveals the alteration he made, alongside his initial intentions as part of I's plan. With our duelists having landed, the connection for our crew in the real world is established, giving them full visual and audio for the soon revelation. That revelation being that the Ignis needed to die anyway. This is a huge shock to everyone except I, Windy and Earth. I, Windy and Earth already having logically figured out the real intentions. The only Ignis to be shocked here is Aqua. Being the more empathetic Ignis, she wouldn't have come to that conclusion at all. Being in the same field and still in his current rage, Soulburner questions why they'd be willing to do that. Lightning continues to explain, by the rest of the Ignis being deleted, besides I, the program section Lightning tampered with would reset their memories to before the Hanoi attempted to attack them just before the beginning of VRAINS. What this means is that all six could rule the digitized human population with no emotional connection to anyone, not even their original human counterparts, truly making them perfect and absolute. The reason I is an exception is because if I were to be deleted, it would be permanent. As described near the start, I was able to temporarily regenerate the Ignis with the data he received from them during episode 102. Those 5 dying now will be automatically entered and run through the program, but I can't do this since he no longer has any kind of external backup or data that holds any part of his consciousness. This meaning that the other Ignis need to protect him, otherwise their plan is truly lost. With this news, we have 2 duels about to commence, Revolver vs Earth and Soulburner vs Lightning. Before discussing these duels, the wildcard that is Aqua needs to be addressed. Given her now conversation with Miyu and the revelation of Lightning shenanigans, Aqua has found new resolve. As much as she may want immortality, she's determined to not have it, if it would come at the cost of losing her memories of Miyu and Aoi. With this resolve, Aqua jumps into Miyu's duel disk and downloads her VRAINS deck for Miyu to use, officially becoming dueling partners for the first time. It is now that they are transported to a different section of the Cyberse world and are greeted by Windy. As you can imagine, this commences a duel between them. With these 3 duels, it's time to dive deeper into them. The first duel to be decided would be Revolver vs Earth. There's really no competition here, Revolver would definitely defeat Earth, and with this win, I feel Revolver can relieve himself a bit of his guilt associated with the Ignis. A small fact that some people might not realise is that in Season 2, despite also dueling 2 Ignis, neither times were the Ignis deleted from that duel. Windy was partially deleted but was saved by Lightning, only to be deleted alongside Flame. And despite the shenanigans that occurred during his duel with Lightning, Lightning chose to be absorbed into Bowman, so at least, by no question, defeating both Flame and Earth, Revolver has properly made his mark in this conflict. The next duel is Soulburner vs Lightning. This was a difficult duel to decide because based on decks alone, this duel could go either way like Revolver vs Flame. However, similar to that duel, without Flame to calm Soulburner down, I do feel Lightning's insults and trash talk would throw Soulburner off his game enough that it would be the deciding factor for Lightning to win the duel. This would again be a big hit to our crew, as Soulburner is one of the best duelists our crew has, but once again it proves Lightning's strength and his threat level. And the last duel here would be Miyu and Aqua vs Windy. Now I was torn on who to give the win to because there is an argument for either. For Miyu and Aqua it would be a good duel to highlight their newfound camaraderie and resolve. It would also elevate their skill level, seeing as how strong Windy has displayed himself so far. Despite this, I am going to give the win to Windy. The most obvious reason is that it makes him more threatening. Having defeated Jin and Kusanagi, Windy makes himself more capable by defeating another Lost Incident victim and an Ignis. This would mirror his duel with Soulburner and Flame, with the obvious difference being he lost that duel but wins this one. Witnessing this duel, Aoi doesn't hesitate to journey to the Cyberse world, with Yusaku being unable to stop her. He notifies Akira, and taking over his part of the counter-coding, Akira also heads to the Cyberse world to join her. Now this would take place during the other two duels which haven't concluded yet. This is done so that when Aoi and Akira hit the randomization barrier, Lightning would have just defeated Soulburner, leading to both Aoi and Akira meeting both Windy and Lightning. Soon after is when Revolver would defeat Earth. Another reason is so that Aoi and Akira would still get to duel together, like how they fought together against Ai in episode 110 and 111. Windy and Lightning being the only other Ignis besides Ai would incite this tag duel, with all players having their own life points. While this duel is going on, Revolver would assist the Hanoi with the counter-coding as Yusaku has decided to enter the Cyberse world too. Now this duel would play out with a knockout pattern, which is why everyone has their own life points. First, Windy would defeat and delete Akira. This is done because it's very unlikely Akira could defeat any of the Ignis, and this again builds up Windy's skill, only for Aoi to defeat him. Now I'll admit, part of the reason for making Windy so threatening was so that this win for Aoi would mean a lot for her, given it's the only duel I'm giving her. In fairness, this rewrite was designed more for the characters we hardly saw, like the rest of the Lost Incident victims, and characters who were more evidently done dirty like Spectre. With how much Windy has been built up in this write alone, this win would be Aoi's biggest win for what it represents. Not only was she able to defeat an Ignis, but she also avenged both Miyu and Aqua and took down a big threat and did it with her Trickstars, her original deck. As much as she may have grown and developed, she stayed true to her roots and got the win. Unfortunately, Lightning would ruin this by defeating her soon later, but it's hard to argue how and why Aoi would or could defeat one of the stronger Ignis. Before the final duel can begin, I will enter with news. His and Lightning's plans have almost succeeded, with all humans, including the outside Hanoi, having been forcibly logged into VRAINS. Now while this might seem quite similar to Bowman's plans in Season 2, there are some differences. The first one being that VRAINS has been completely altered to be a digitized version of Den City. This goes back to how the Ignis planned to be humanity's ruler in a domain that will be familiar to them, but where they will always be superior, digital. Second, Bowman's plans were limited to duelists intentionally logging into VRAINS, only to be forcibly trapped once they'd done so. Here, as mentioned earlier, having assigned a piece of Soltech to everyone in the city and using the program to bridge the gap, by using the Soltech's network as like a modem, it's not just duelists being trapped but anyone. This plan has the intention of taking advantage of how much technology is integrated into ordinary life, almost like a punishment for being too technology dependent. All that needs to happen now is for Yusaku and Revolver to be defeated, as with the last bit of work he and the Hanoi were able to do, a last resort program was installed into Yusaku's duel disk, which he shares with Revolver. This just shows how much smarter the Ignis, more specifically Ai and Lightning, have become since Bowman's plans. During then, the Hanoi's plan barely succeeded without the last button click from Akira, but here the Hanoi in the real world have been taken out, and now the only way to stop the Ignis is to kill them. And this is where the struggle comes, because just like in the original Season 3, Yusaku was very reluctant to even duel Ai, but was intentionally pressured by the circumstances to do so. Here he almost has a choice, as despite still being forced to duel, it's not just up to him whether the Ignis are deleted, as by sharing the program with Revolver, a person who he knows is dead set on killing the Ignis, the plan should still go through. With these factors in mind, the duel is Playmaker and Revolver versus Ai and Lightning. Before going into the outcome of this duel, I need to give it justice for how amazing and interesting it is. First you have Playmaker and Revolver actively teaming up on the same side. This proves how much these two have rubbed off and warmed up to each other after all they've been through and how much they trust each other. However, as mentioned previously, it's still partly an uneasy alliance, as Revolver knows Playmaker may have some hesitation going in for the kill, so he needs to be there so at least one of them is dueling without hesitation. On the other side you have Ai and Lightning actively teaming up. After how much they disagree during the tail end of Season 2, this team up goes to show more specifically how much Lightning has messed with Ai's head, that he's willing to not initially trust him, work on the program with him, and even after learning the changes Lightning made, still willing to stand by his side. Furthermore, it goes to show that Ai never wants to leave his fellow Ignis alone again, as evident when he encouraged Lightning to save Windy from deletion in episode 70. With that out of the way, it's time to move on with how the duel would actually play out. Outside of each duelist having their moments to trash talk and combo off and summon some of their best monsters, Revolver would defeat Lightning and knock him out of the duel. This first gives Revolver more closure regarding his guilt regarding the Lost Incident and the Ignis, especially this time defeating the Ignis that kinda got one over him in their last duel, but also the one that caused him the most pain by infecting his father. Also, given Lightning was running out of limited resurrection, he probably wouldn't duel as well anyway, which is the biggest reason he had to team up with I, so it makes sense why he'd be the first duelist to fall. It could also give I having an emotional moment with Lightning about how he'd always hoped Lightning would see his side of this conflict, with Lightning smugly pointing out he was the only incomplete Ignis, therefore he never could or would. After this, I would have I defeat Revolver. This would be immediate revenge for Revolver defeating Lightning, but would also be I's personal revenge on Revolver, as he was his target for the entirety of Season 1. Within this time, I would have had Revolver have summoned Boral End Dragon, and in order to defeat it, I would unveil the arrival Cybers at Ignista. This would take Revolver completely by surprise, but with it being the monster defeating him, it would be necessary for Yusaku to become organized by this point. Revolver would have been dueling for both of them, with Yusaku dueling somewhat hesitantly till now. We'd get an emotional moment between Yusaku and Revolver to immediately mirror I and Lightning's moment, like his death in episode 98, but more focused on Yusaku and Revolver's relationship till that point. From here on, the duel would continue with Playmaker vs I, and just like in the actual Season 3, the final duel comes down to the series-long partners of Playmaker and I. Now this duel wouldn't obviously be as intense as the version we got here, as it started out as a tag duel, but it would still have the same intensity during those final few turns, with Yusaku still summoning Dark Fluid and Access Code Talker. Yusaku would go on to defeat I, returning all of our defeated crew back to life, returning all the hostage humans back to their bodies, and after an emotional moment between Yusaku and I would die, signaling and completing the extinction of the Ignis. A decent period of time would pass, at minimum a week, and all of our characters who have returned to life will be back to their regular lives with some slight alterations. The Hanoi would continue monitoring the net for any threats they feel equipped to handle, Soltec will be back running their usual selves. Akira and Kusanagi will be experimenting with some residual data from the core, which would lead to a business deal with Soltec, with them mostly in charge of VRAINS. Emma and Dojun will be back to their bounty hunting, with Team Lost having become a tighter friend group, all moving on. Now just because this is the ending, there are a few more duels to go around. First would be Soulburner vs Revolver. This duel is one that we already got during the original Season 3, and it is arguably the best duel in VRAINS. I feel like I had to include it here. With the Ignis threat over, Revolver would still agree to duel Soulburner with no stakes, given their lack of a duel in episode 84. Kiku would be spectating, as it would occur the same time Soulburner went home, which would cause the duel to be framed slightly differently, but Soulburner would still win. Another duel I would have is Aoi vs Go, as part of their Charisma Duelist circuit. Although it was never confirmed, I'm confident these two would have duelled in episode 1 if the Hanoi didn't invade Link VRAINS looking for I. As for who would win, I feel this duel could go either way. Personally, I would give Aoi the win. This would be another big win for her, and given Go's journey, he wouldn't let this loss consume him, but train for a rematch later on. For the ending scene, it will be Yusaku just having left the Cybers world, having created graves for all 6 Ignis and Roboki, similar to I in episode 103, finally managing to put this ordeal and a majority of his lost incident trauma behind him. He would return in Link VRAINS to meet up with Soulburner, and the two of them would engage in a duel. Who would win? I think I'll leave that to the imagination, as no matter who I choose, I could easily flip, choose the other, and justify my choice. Looking back, I didn't realise how linear this rewrite would go. By this I mean I didn't realise the plot would remain such a gauntlet, with characters being defeated left and right. Then again, given the pool of characters who would get involved, it was bound to happen. This aspect is what plagued early Season 3. However, I feel I did enough work to not only justify early deletion, but give the necessary characters either a good reason or closure with their defeats. Like I mentioned at the start, one of my main focuses was on the characters rather than the plot. The original Season 3 plot focused a bit too much on the most popular characters and their influence on the plot, meaning all the side characters were mostly waved aside. Given this, I focused on several different character interactions, along with interesting duels and results that benefited who I believed to be the right character. In truth, it was always going to be a bit of a mess to rewrite Season 3, as with I being the only surviving Ignis, the entire plot has to funnel through him, as otherwise, all other characters as seen in episode 103 have mostly returned to their ordinary lives, and only when I made his move did they engage in the plot. Also, I wanted to make sure that I didn't too much solo that everyone had to go through only him to win, which is why I made the possibly controversial change of bringing the other Ignis back, albeit with their own handicap. Overall, I am happy with how this turned out, and I hope this does justice for a majority of VRAINS characters and their personal plotlines. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed, and have a good day.